Welcome back into another episode of the Outsider Sports Hockey Podcast. I'm Ben Mandel, joined by Tom Leone. No Mikey D this week. He will be back next week, though, guys, so don't worry. We are still rolling through the playoffs, and we are through pretty much every single game four. As we are recording this, you have the New Jersey Devils, who trail the Carolina Hurricanes 3-1 in that series after just an embarrassing performance in Game 4. You have the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers. They will be dropping the puck shortly, so we won't have Game 4 final here in this podcast, but still plenty to talk about in that series through the first 3 games. And the other series out west, it's the Dallas Stars and the Seattle Kraken. And the Seattle Kraken have been my biggest surprise of the postseason. That series currently tied 2-2. Really just a lot of fireworks, and I think even though, we've seen some lopsided scores throughout the postseason, there's just genuinely a lot of parity throughout the league. Tom, what are your thoughts so far, just overall to start, on what round 2 has been like?
Truthfully, to me, I think round 2 has been extremely boring compared to what we saw in round 1. There haven't been too many close games. There's been a lot of blowouts, but I think what's happening is you're seeing an inconsistency from certain teams that are new to the playoffs, Seattle, New Jersey, and you're seeing teams and Toronto, and they're new to the second round, right? I mean, Florida got swept last year in the second round. They seem to have learned something and have brought it into this year. And this playoffs, Toronto, first time in the second round. They're down 3-0, or, probably going to be 3-1 by the time this is done recording. And then New Jersey's down 3-1 after getting...
It is now officially 3-1.
Cool, yeah.
Toronto won final. They won huge brawl at the end of the game.
Nice. And hey, they can get back to Florida for Game 6. Things can get interesting. But back to what I was saying, like New Jersey down 3-1. They're a new team. They had a big series a round 1 win. And then, Seattle Dallas has been the tightest series. Even Edmonton Vegas has been, boring games. That's the one thing that's bothering me about round 2. I think the teams, there hasn't been a game where I've looked at and said, wow, this team played better, they should have won, and the other team stole one. Every game I think that a team has won in round 2, they've deservedly won it. And it's to me, I guess the one word like I open this up with is boring, for me at least. I like close, intense playoff games, especially as the series go on. And this is, I think, to both of our points about how a lot of round 1 series are more like round 2 series, and round 2 series are more like round 1 series with the playoff format.
Yeah, I think that this round there's just been a lot of just lopsided scores. Now, I think that even with the lopsided scores, the Western Conference games have still been electric just because of the fireworks these teams possess. I think games 2 and 3 of the Vegas series were extremely boring. Game 1 was electric. Leon Draisaitl was awesome. I've thought that every single game in the Seattle-Dallas series has been exciting, despite, the recent blowout. It seems like there's just been blowouts in every series. In the New Jersey series, we've seen the starting goaltender for at least one of the teams get pulled in each game so far through the first 4 games of the series. First time that's happened.
Bothers me so much as a Ranger fan.
Well, I mean, you just think, all you got to do is just get through, you just pick up one more win.
Yep. And if they picked up one more win, if they won that Game 7, if they decided to show up, I think I'd be a pretty happy Ranger fan right now. But that's neither here nor there.
Speaking of, I do actually want to touch on that news because the Rangers and Gerard Gallant did part ways. Tom, yes. I know you were saying if the Devils 1-5, you were happy about it because then you'd be getting a new coach. Well, you're getting a new coach, so how do you feel? Because I actually am not so sure. I do agree. I think it was time to move on, but I'm not sure you're going to get a better coach.
I think we're going to get the guy that's sitting on your bench, or Sheldon Keefe or Mike Sullivan. I think Jury's going to wait it out, and I think he's got a safety plan in Chris Knobloch, the coach of Hartford, who I think could be a surprisingly sneaky, good head coaching hire. I think he's going to wait it out, maybe see if Sullivan leaves Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh releases him of those duties. If Sheldon Keefe gets fired from Toronto, although I think tonight's win helped them a little bit. Or I think Andrew Burnett is their top of the list. And if it's one of those three guys, I'll be happy. And I guess two other names are Bruce Boudreau, who I'd be happy with. And truthfully, I'd like to see Mike Babcock back in the NHL, and I think he'd be a good hire. Other than that, any other guy, I'd be like, like if it's a guy I've never really heard of, or guy with experience in as an assistant coach for many years, or in lower leagues, not named Chris Knobloch, I won't be happy. But it was time to move on from Gallant. Clearly, he lost the locker room. I mean, those guys were basically decided to show up when they wanted to show up, and nothing the coach did or didn't do helped. And his inability in the playoffs to make changes killed him. Like, before I get your point on, like, before you jump in here and give your, because I'm curious to see what you think is going to happen with the Rangers. Lindy Ruff, to me, outcoached Gerard Gallant and did circles around him. He pushed all the right buttons. The goalie changes, what goal he was playing, what game, everything he did. The Schmid move pretty much won the Devils last series. If he stuck with Vanacek, that series is over in 5, in my opinion. And
probably 4, to be honest.
Maybe 4. Yeah,
we've seen the way
true.
Vanacek didn't play good at all in the other 2 games. He still gave up 4 goals.
Yeah,
he gave up 3 shorthanded goals.
It's
in
true.
Game 3. He's just lucky his team scored 8 goals in front of him.
Yeah, and he's just made the right move around Gallant, and that to me was like, you know what, it's time for Gallant to go. These players don't want to play with him, and the exit interviews just showed that. Get a new voice in there. The roster's not going to change that much, so that's pretty much the only big change you can make is get a new voice, and I think it was the right move. If they didn't get out of the first round, you needed to fire him because they weren't going to take another step next year. So,
well, and that's the thing. It sucks if you're Gallant because you're like, look at what I did last year. Look at what we did this year. It's not like we played. And I think that's actually what lost him his job is the fact that he said, well, we played a great team.
Yeah.
Like he was saying it wasn't necessarily us. It was also them.
Well, him and Jury got into a screaming match after Game 4 because supposedly there was just tensions about no lineup changes or line changes, and they just laid down like a dog after going up 2-0. They wasted a 2-0 lead in the road.
You know that's what you're getting out of Gerard Gallant. Like when you hire Gerard Gallant, what's his flaw? What's the one thing people say is his problem? The fact that he is too stubborn and won't change.
Yeah, it's so true. And when he does, when he does change, he does it out of spite. Yeah,
you can't yell at the guy. Why do you think the Rangers went out and played like they did in Game 5? If your GM is going to go and scream at your coach for not changing things up, pretty much saying you don't have faith in the locker room, but the coach does. Why do you think the Rangers went and laid an egg in Game 5 and got shut out? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not Gallant who lost the locker room, but I did. So here are some rumblings I've heard. I don't think it's going to happen, but I am intrigued because if it does, I would be thrilled as a Devils fan. If the Maple Leafs do not make it out of this round, which they have to win 3 more games, totaling 4 in a row against the Florida Panthers in order to do so, the Leafs are going to fire Dubas and clean house. The Penguins are going to turn around and hire Dubas and clean house. I mean, either way, it looks like they'll likely clean house with a new regime stepping in. I can't see Sullivan surviving that, but
Sullivan's going to be the Rangers head coach. That's my pick.
And that's where this thread leads. And I would be ecstatic because I have been saying for years that Mike Sullivan has been carried by Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. He has not really shown to me that he's a good coach. I have said it repeatedly on this pod that the Penguins' defensive system is really screwed up. I talked about how it's really messing with their young defensemen in the system. I got to see it firsthand in Wilkes-Barre. And when I go to Game 6 at the Garden and bump into John Marino's dad, and I tell him that I was with Wilkes-Barre and that I got to meet Hexenberg, And all he does is just sit there and tell me the things that I have been saying about Mike Sullivan's system and what it does to defensemen. And the things that he asks of them are just, it's just not feasible. Like, he thinks that all 6 of his defensemen are going to play like Chris Letang, which, by the way, Chris Letang plays like a forward. You want all 6 of your defensemen playing like a forward? That's why the Penguins suck. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
He's gotten carried by Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin on 2 separate lines, helping carry the forecheck, finding a way to get them 5 goals a game. I mean, it's not like the Penguins had tons of depth scoring during those runs.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I'd be happy with it because he was a Rangers assistant coach, and I think maybe he'd have more faith in his D-men in New York than he did in Pittsburgh, and I think he would give a pedigree, and he knows the area, he knows the organization. I think it'd be a good hire. Him or Burnett are my top 2. So yeah, and both are just home run hires. And the only way I don't see Burnett, like if they clean house, I think Sullivan's the Rangers head coach. But if it's between Sullivan and Burnett, I would like the Rangers to choose Burnett for one of 2 reasons. One, you take away a strength from a rival and one that you're going to be competing with for the next couple of years. And 2, he's got the prospects to be a really good head coach for a very long time. And he's got playoff experience. He won a President's Trophy after taking over for Quenneville last year in Florida. And the only way I see Burnett not taking the Rangers job is if he knows he's getting the Devils job when Lindy says, I'm done here. And
that's, I think that's might be coming this year.
You think Lindy's going to leave after this year and go into like a manager role and then Burnett?
Do you see the way that Lindy has been talking in these press conferences?
Yeah, he's kind of talking like this is his last run, and
he's tired. He's done, man. I think Andrew Burnett came over to the Devils and took an assistant job instead of a head coaching job, which I'm pretty sure he could have gotten after being nominated for the Jack Adams last season. There's no way he couldn't get a head coaching job this year.
Maybe he didn't like any of the opportunities.
I think he saw the opportunity with the Devils. I think Lindy said, this is going to be it. Let's bring Andrew in and let's get him ready to give him the keys.
Hey, if that's the case, then good for the Devils.
I've been saying since they brought Burnett over that I think this is it for Lindy. And while I actually have not been thinking that until after Game 7 of the Rangers series, after Game 7, the way Lindy's been talking, it sounds like he's ready.
Yeah,
he's had enough. They asked him how fun it is. He said it's not been fun at all. He's done.
And to your point too, the Rangers haven't even interviewed anybody yet. Gallant's been fired for almost a week. Usually this stuff with head coaching vacancies, it usually rolls pretty quick. They haven't even brought in anybody that's a free agent coach right now. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. There's no NHL rule that says it has to be after the season that they interview head coaches. They can start right now.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure especially a team that's still going, it's not like the NFL where
no. That's my point right now. It's my point that I think the Rangers' top choices are connected to the playoffs, and that's why they haven't brought anybody else in. They're waiting to the playoffs.
I've also heard Quenneville.
Yeah, but
I don't see the league letting him
back, and I
don't see the league letting him back.
New York,
especially.
Dolan, the way he is as an owner in New York, and the backlash that would get to a premier. The Rangers, I know they haven't won a lot of championships, but they are an organization that is very classy, respectful. That's why they kind of keep that pedigree, even though they haven't won as much as some of the other original sixes, is because of the New York market and the pedigree and the classiness. I know some people will say, Mikey D, that the fans don't follow that, but as an organization as a whole, they always take care of people. That's why I can't see Quenneville being a hire. There's no way.
Well, I'll tell you what. Look, I went to the Garden, surrounded by nothing but Rangers fans, and I was being obnoxious. We gave it back and forth to each other. My team was getting smacked. It was nothing but love from the Ranger fans, though.
Yeah, no, it's the Ranger fans that go to the Rock that are bad because they're from.
Well, you know what it is too. It's the ones that go to the Garden. It's like, okay, they're the the 1% of Ranger fans.
Yeah,
Right.
because
And
it's a
then
certain
the ones that
cost to
go to
go
the
to the
Rock,
Garden. Yeah.
exactly. The ones that go to the Rock are like, oh, this is when we can afford to go to the game. So they're rowdy, they're drinking,
And you're
they're
always
just
more rowdy at a
going.
road game, always too,
And
which doesn't
plus, like,
help.
it's all the
Yeah.
Staten Island guys.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, it's a lot easier to get to the Rock from Staten Island than to get to the Garden, surprisingly, even though it's the
That's
same
just,
state.
I mean, the Garden in general, it's just, and plus, I mean, you just look at the difference in ticket prices.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
Garden's like twice as much, but I will say for my first time ever going to the Garden and seeing a game there, I understand the price of admission.
Yep.
It's a
It's a
a
beautiful
wonderful, wonderful atmosphere.
there's it's an aura. It's hard to explain. It's like the lights are brighter. It's like the way I don't know how to explain it. It's just you have to see it to understand what I'm trying to say right now. It's
No,
I know I'm a
completely get what
homer,
you're
but
saying.
it is. I would
No,
understand why, as a player, I'd want to go there, wear that sweater, or wear the Knicks jersey and play at that arena. It's just something about it.
no, I'll tell you right now, my dream would be to call a Stanley Cup game at Madison Square Garden. Like that's peak for me. I'll be
Yeah,
honest. And
hopefully
as
that.
upsetting, look, the Devils can't be playing in the Stanley Cup if the Rangers are in it. So obviously, like, I mean, maybe let's get a neutral site Stanley Cup.
Yeah, right. Hey, well, speaking of the Devils, let's talk about them. What's going
Yeah,
on with
no,
them, because they're
let's
getting
get into the
manhandled.
postseason
Yeah.
here. Let's get into round two. Carolina, New Jersey. Tom, I want to hear your thoughts on this series because we both picked the Devils to win, and I'm pretty sure we both picked the Devils to win in six.
That can't
And
happen.
not possible anymore. But really, the Devils just don't look like they look good for spurts, but then they don't look good. What is going on?
I don't know, because it's not the team I watched beat my team. I mean, I didn't watch 3 of the games because I was overseas, but the games I did watch, like it wasn't like, it's not the Game 7 Devils that completely manhandled the Rangers from start to finish, or the highlights that I watched of games 3, 4, and 5 that manhandled the Rangers. It's not that team. I don't know what it is, and Carolina, to me, is not more talented than the Rangers. They don't have more talent. They definitely don't have the goaltending that the Rangers have. So is it Rod Brindamore's system? Did he get these guys ready to play? Do they have like some type of chip on their shoulder because everybody was writing them off because of the injuries they had, and they now are playing a young team and they're feasting on the young team with their relentless forecheck and that ugly muck it up system that Brindamore plays, the hockey nerd that he is? And that's what's doing it? Or is it like the veterans in the locker room kind of just not stepping up? Is it Lindy being tired? I don't have an answer. It's surprising to me that they're already down 3-1, and it's surprising to me how they're losing. To your point earlier, it's like VTech gave up all those shorthanded goals. They gave up 3 shorthanded goals in one game, but because Carolina just got crazy bad goaltending that game, it wasn't even close because the Devils put 8 past.
Carolina gave up some softies, but
Yeah,
New Jersey was just all over them.
that's true.
But they've also been doing that. They just can't play from behind. And you saw this in the Ranger series. It was the same thing. They just forget how to play. They get desperate and think, oh my God, we have to come back and score now. When I was watching the 2021 Islanders playing in that season after the bubble, when I was writing for Isles blog, one thing you never saw with them when they fell behind was panic under Barry Trotz. And that's what a great coach does. With Carolina, there's no panic. You know, they gave up that early goal, just a bad bounce off Jack Hughes' knee in game 4. And then they go out and just roll the rest of the way.
And to
the
your
Devils
point,
dominated and had them on their heels.
it's true. And sorry to cut you off here, but like almost it's, I guess what your point just made me realize is almost like that maybe the Devils have always played like in the regular season, panic sometimes works, especially when you have that much speed. And against like a Rangers team, panic might work because you have so much speed that when you play that fat, like, oh my God, we got to go.
Well, and when you're playing a team that's not as good as you.
or that. But
in the regular season, there's a lot of bad teams.
yes, yeah, for the regular season point, and then the playoff point, like against like the Rangers, when you play with that intensity, they were down 2-0. They were just so much faster and just going after and playing panicky. But when you're faster, that much faster than a team, and have that much more foot speed, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt more. You get a couple big saves, and that happens against Carolina. You can't do that, and maybe that's what's happening. Maybe the Devils play a panicky style when they're behind, and it works in the regular season because, to your point, they're playing bad teams, and now it's just something they got to learn, right? Maybe they can bounce back and salvage this series. You never know. Crazier things have happened. Or this is going to be a learning point into next year where we just need to use our speed. Don't play panicky. Don't play crazy and start pinching more from the D-men. Play your game. Even if you're down 1, 2, 3 goals, we have enough talent to put the puck in the back of the net. We don't have to change our style because like good teams are never going to panic and not going to change their style no matter what the situation of the game is.
No, you're not wrong. And here's what I think is what it is. And I didn't want to believe it, but I think after yesterday it was true. And by yesterday I mean after game 4, because you saw them quit after they gave up the second goal, and the Hurricanes jumped and scored like 4 goals in the span of like 3.5 minutes. Just terrible, embarrassing. I think the Devils emotionally peaked in the Rangers series. And that's very, very common for a young team in the playoffs for the first time. You don't necessarily know how to get it up every game. You don't know what kind of intensity you need to bring for each game. And I think they burned out in the Rangers series, and they had to because they fell behind early like that. And I think,
and they didn't have the goaltending to bail them out, because I watched that with my team last year. They got that emotional win against Pittsburgh, and they got manhandled in games 1 and 2, but somehow kept the games close because Igor stood on his head and then kind of used and backed up their goaltending in 1-2 at home. And then, the rest is history. But they had the goaltending to back them up for playing bad, and that's what the Devils unfortunately don't have.
That's the difference between Igor and Vitek. And I mean, look, what have I been saying about Vitek all year?
You were scared of him.
I said this was going to happen.
Yep.
I said he is not going to be there come playoff time. That is not the Vitek we're going to see. But let's go through these other series, because we do have 3 other series going on. We'll stay in the East and talk Toronto and Florida. Toronto was able to pick up the win tonight, so they make it a 3-1 series. Tom, how did Florida jump out to a 3-0 series lead? This team that went down 3-1 against Boston, won 3 in a row there, and then won 3 in a row against Toronto. How is this happening?
They bamboozled us. And I just want to say one more thing. Carolina, we got to give them credit too. I'm giving them credit. That's the last thing I'm going to say about that series. Anyway, Florida bamboozled us, because you made this point when we were first starting recording this podcast, that was the team that scared you. If they got in, they could beat Boston, and that was kind of where I was like, okay, could be a first round exit. I don't know, but I was thinking more Ottawa or Buffalo based on how they played each other. But Florida won a President's Trophy last year, got swept in the second round. They got better this year with the Tkachuk trade and getting Verhaeghe and things like that. And guys taking next steps like Montour and you know what they got come playoff time? Goaltending. Consistent, dominating goaltending in Bobrovsky. And that is why he's 6-2 now, because they lost tonight, but he's 6-2. He's got almost a 91% save percentage. And they play a relentless forechecking, dominating game. They are suffocating. And I think that they are going to go to the Cup. And I think it's crazy because I like Toronto in this series, because I was like, you know what? Florida just had its crazy comeback against the greatest NHL regular season team ever. This is a perfect opportunity for Toronto, and they folded. Toronto doesn't have the 16 game players, doesn't have the playoff players, don't have the guys that are hungry. They seem like they won a Stanley Cup by getting out of the first round, and they got absolutely bamboozled. They lost the game in overtime, and you know what? It's 3-1 now. There's still a chance, but Florida's gonna close it out.
To your point about Florida and the Boston series, that's what I thought was going to happen. That's what's happening with New Jersey, that emotional high that you peaked. You got too emotional. You peaked emotionally too early. And that's what I thought was going to happen with Florida. It didn't. Now, if Toronto's able to come back it didn't look like the way Florida played today, Toronto's going to come back and win. Toronto really had to work for this win tonight. And just from the Maple Leaf standpoint, They have just a lot of work to do. They're doing it with a backup goaltender in Joseph Wall, who played fantastic today. He played great in game number 3 as well when he came in relief of Samsonov. But it's just a high hill for the Leafs to climb, and Florida is just they're relentless, like you said. I've seen a lot of comparisons to the 2012 LA Kings. I think it's more of the 2012 Devils. You play that tough series in round 1, roll through round 2 in 5 games, and then you have a 6-game series win, a tough one, but one that ultimately you end up winning before falling in the cup. And I think that's Florida's fate at this point in the season.
I agree with you.
Let's jump in. 2 West teams really quickly. We'll start with Dallas, Seattle. The Kraken are now tied 2-2 after losing in game 4, but I think Seattle's looked like one of the best teams this postseason. Their poise, their confidence. Hextall's done a great job behind the bench, someone who I heavily criticized when he was hired by the Kraken to be the first bench boss, but they've built a really good team, a lot of good young talent, and a good mix of veterans as well. What are your thoughts on Seattle? And not only that, Philip Grubauer, who's all of a sudden returned to being a superstar goaltender this postseason.
I guess this is what you get when you have a team full of second and third liners making up 12 guys and then some youngsters and infusing some skill and speed. I'm impressed. I wasn't expecting it. I think I had them out early in round 1, and Dallas, I think, is going to come out on top of this series, but I'm very impressed with Seattle. This is a big stepping stone for an organization like that. They can be like Vegas now, probably in the mix every year. They're going to, maybe move some pieces around, some of their depth guys that are getting some trade value during this playoff run. They can ship those guys out to clear up some cap and maybe get bigger names in. And Grubauer playing really solid, consistent hockey that a playoff team needs. And he's made the big save when he needs to in their games that they've won. I could see this series going 7. I think Dallas gets on top. Dallas is very impressive to me as well. And Robertson, Pavelski seemed to just brought a different energy since he's come back, scored 4 goals early in this series. It's been fun to watch. Like to your point earlier, it's probably been the most fun series. I know I use the word boring, but that's definitely been the most fun series. And impressed with Seattle, impressed with Dallas. Both 2 good teams. Both would be deserving if they got through, but I think Dallas gets through Seattle here and heads to the Western Conference Final.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all of us picked Dallas to win this in 5. Or there was one of us who didn't pick Dallas in 5 or something along those lines.
Yeah, we didn't show them much respect.
Yeah, we very much were thinking. I mean, but part of that is because of how high, for me personally at least, I am on the Stars. They've gone out and built a really good team.
I really like them. Yep. You're 100%.
Yeah, so all of us picked Dallas in 6, except for Ariana, who took Dallas in 7, actually. So all of our predictions are still in play here, but we all took Dallas in this series, and that was with what we saw from Seattle. I loved what I saw from Seattle against Colorado. I thought that they put on a clinic. I think that Jared Bednar is the second best coach in the NHL right now, behind Rod Brind'Amour, to be honest, with what he was able to do with what his team put on the ice. I think he did a masterful job getting them to a 7th game and almost winning that series. So really great job by the Seattle Kraken and what they've been able to overcome already in their first postseason, and looking really strong while doing it, winning both on the road and at home, which is just crucial.
Yep. Got to do both. And I couldn't agree with you more.
So let's shift into the last series, Edmonton and Vegas. And Mikey D and I were saying that this was kind of like the real Western Conference final, despite what we think of Dallas. I think these are the 2 best teams in the West, in Edmonton and Vegas. I think that's what we've seen, despite 2 blowouts and 1 exciting, close back and forth game.
This is turning into like a low-key bloodbath, this series. I'm so excited to watch this game since, we're recording and it's about to start. I'm so excited to just hop in bed and watch this one.
Oh, it's going to be exciting. And Laurent Brossoit, who was playing really well for Vegas, out. Aiden Hill comes in relief and plays great. What are we going to see out of Vegas tonight in goal? What are we going to see out of Edmonton in their power play, which was finally held off the board last game?
Crazy.
Leon
That's
Draisaitl
impressive
bounced
to
back.
do by Vegas.
Well, but if any team can do it, it's Vegas. And that's why I think this is the real Western Conference final, because Vegas has the defense to do it. They have more scoring than you realize.
Yes, especially with Stone coming back.
That's like, I keep thinking to myself, you got Stone, Barbashev, Eichel. Like, you forget how
you got
good
Carlson, Marchessault, and Carrier. Like, yeah, they're deep.
It's
Stevenson.
It's definitely Chandler, and he's their leading scorer in the playoffs. It's Chandler Stevenson. This is a very, very good, deep Vegas team, and I love watching them play. This series, I can't wait for this game. So,
me too. But I'm going to say this: Ryan Nugent-Hopkins scoring the first goal. You could probably still get the bet in before it starts. That's my prediction.
You could
in front on the power play is going to tip one in. That's my guess.
I know you're putting that out there for me because we put this out in the morning, but
yes. Well, so when people are listening to this and hear this towards the end of the pod, they're going to go to Bleacher Report, they're going to look, or they're going to know that Nugent-Hopkins scored the first goal. Yeah,
and look, I will tell you right now, when Tom said that, they are singing the national anthem, the American national anthem. So you still got to wait for "O Canada" as well afterwards. Still got some time.
Yes, they did a cool intro with the CU Chief Indian Chief. They did a really cool
they did that for Game 3 too. I love that they've been showing that stuff on TV. And I mean, these are two teams that have intros. You have the Vegas show on ice as well. They do a great job. But just thoughts on how you think this series is going to finish and how it plays out. Who comes out on top?
I think Edmonton comes out on top. I think Draisaitl, McDavid are going to take it to another notch when they need to, like they've shown already. And I think this is finally the year for Edmonton. I really do. They get through Vegas. They're going to have an inferior opponent in either Seattle or Dallas. And this is the year McDavid. We finally see the greatest player in the league fight for the Stanley Cup. I really do think Edmonton comes out on top.
I agree with you, and the reason why I agree with you is not only McDavid, but Draisaitl's been the best player for Edmonton so far.
Yep.
I mean, when you have two guys like that, and in a conference that is as wide open as it is, Edmonton has to be the clear-cut contender. Even if they lose in Game 4, I still like Edmonton to pull the series out with the weapons they have and their ability to just take over and dominate. You can never count them out. I mean, the last game, I think it was like 6-1. I still kept it on because you never know what Edmonton can do.
Never, ever know. You're 100% right.
And that's the reality for the entirety of the playoffs. And we are going to continue getting coverage. We'll continue getting some recaps and reactions up on the TikTok. Make sure you check it out by searching Outsider Sports. Follow us on Twitter as well by searching Outsider Sports 3. Check us out on YouTube and follow our website. It's at www.outsidersports.net. And catch us next week as we have another episode breaking down more playoff hockey.